Sequence. Don't adjust your dial. You're listening to WFCK Radio. Discover the power. Half hour. With On the Spot with Preacher and the Spaniard. Welcome everyone and all species to the hottest voices in the morning. Your lover's favorite voice to wake up to in the morning. Here's your hosts, Preacher and the Spaniard.
With Preacher and the Spaniard.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to On the Spot. I am back. It's Preacher. Oh, boy. Here we go again. Oh, man. Happy Wednesday, everybody. It is March 3rd, 2021. That's right, March 3. So, yeah, we're going to talk about Texas, taxes, and technology today. TTT. But first, let's take a look outside at the weather. It is currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit. That is going up to a high of 52 today. Sunny, gloriously sunny. 30 for the low tonight with 38 for the high tomorrow and a 26 for the low on Thursday night. Oh boy. Okay, let's get into this because, yeah, just people. I don't know what's going on, but people. Yeah. So first of all, I don't know if you've heard, but Texas. We're going to start with Texas. And part of the reason we're starting with Texas is because we're going to talk about the virus a little bit and what's been going on. So Governor Greg Abbott of Texas announced yesterday, he is lifting the mask mandate for the state. Now, health officials are warning people, don't ease safety restrictions, don't do this, don't do that. Here's what he's actually said, though. He is lifting statewide mandates, but localities can still implement things that they believe are most important for their people. So that means, quite simply, it's not blanket anymore. It is, if you are in Houston, you're going to have Houston area provisions put in place. If you're in Dallas, you're going to have Dallas area provisions put in place. If you're in the middle of freaking nowhere and there is no person for the next 5 miles, congratulations. It's up to you. He's basically saying it's responsibility. Now, this is a pretty cool thing that he's done here. Too many Texans have been sidelined from employment opportunities, according to Governor Abbott. Too many small businesses have struggled to pay their bills. This must end. It's now time to open Texas 100%. Now, Abbott said that business of any type will be allowed to open 100% beginning March 10. Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves also announced on Tuesday the end of all county mask mandates and that businesses can open at 100% capacity, and the new orders will go into effect today. So hospitalizations and case numbers have plummeted and the vaccine is being rapidly distributed. It is time, according to Governor of Mississippi. Now, interestingly enough, we're going to take a look real quick. This is the one that pops up on Google. But this is the 7-day average, essentially, for Texas. Now, Texas hasn't really been hit as hard as many other places, but their 7-day average currently is about 7,200 people coming down with new cases every day. But they haven't had the deaths, to be honest. They haven't had the deaths. They've had 2.67 million cases. Understandable. They've had 44,000 deaths, which is half of what Illinois has. And they're almost twice the size of Illinois in population. So something's not jiving here. Now Illinois has less than 1,700. Right? Actually, let me correct that. I want to correct that. Sorry, the average is about 1,700 right now in Illinois. So, what's going on here? I'm trying to figure out. Illinois, who has 1,700 cases average per day, we are still under lockdown. Bars are still closed. Everything is still closed. There's nothing going on. So it's one of those things where come on, but again, small business owners, I still know of small businesses that have had to close down permanently because of restrictions put in place and they can't pay the bills. Things are stacking up, and this hopefully is going to be a step in the right direction for Texans. Now, again, that's Texans. Okay. It doesn't change things in Illinois. It doesn't change things in Pennsylvania. It doesn't change things in Ohio, but it changes things for Texans. Now, Governor Newsom from California had to weigh in this and calls it absolutely reckless. This is terrible. Again, Governor Newsom, and I quote, he states that localities are able to implement the restrictions necessary that they feel, they are able to implement restrictions that they feel are necessary to keep Texans safe in their localities. It's that simple. It really is. It's that simple. So why is this such an issue? Why is this such a problem? Now, Abbott cautioned, and this is a good thing. Governor Abbott from Texas said, removing state mandates does not end personal responsibility. Personal vigilance to follow safe standards is still needed to maintain COVID. It's just that the state the state mandates are no longer needed. Now, meanwhile, 96% of California's population remains in the most restrictive purple tier, though a number of counties are expected to move to the less restrictive red tier this week. Newsom is facing a recall effort, which could be nearing a vote over his handling of the coronavirus pandemic. The decision comes as governors across the U.S. have been easing coronavirus restrictions. The only ones I can think of are Florida, Texas, and Mississippi now. But yeah, very. It's interesting how this is happening now. Of course, it's not just Newsom that has to weigh in, and it's not just Abbott that's saying things. Of course, scientists are reacting to this. Other people are reacting to this. And here we go. Here's what Fauci says. He basically says that people need to be responsible. People need to wear masks. If you feel it's necessary, wear two. But here's the head scratching moment, everybody. Here's the head scratching moment. Dr. Fauci said that you may have small gatherings in the home if you all have the vaccine. And that the relative risk would be so low that you may not have to wear a mask in your own home. So you could get a small, good social gathering in your own home as long as you have the vaccine, and then you wouldn't have to wear a mask. Now, Fauci went on to clarify that a small get-together in one's home is quite different from attending a large social gathering. Quote, the setting in a home of a small group of people having dinner together, all of whom are vaccinated, is very different when you step out the door and go into a society that has 70,000 new cases a day. Okay, fair enough. Now, we have 65 on average, but that's primarily being bumped up from the earlier average. We're at about 57,000 cases a day right now. So, yeah, interestingly enough. But Fauci's saying that in the same press conference, actually, I should say, in the same press conference, the Center for Disease Control prevention director Rochelle Walensky said, quote, "Now is not the time to relax critical safeguards that we know can stop the spread of COVID-19 in our communities. Not when we are so close." So close to what? So close to people going crazy, so close to businesses shutting down, so close to forgetting what life was like normally. I mean, when you say so close, what do you mean when you say so close? Numbers have dropped dramatically. I mean, dramatically. From our peak was right around January 7. Okay. That was the highest the cases have ever been. It was about 200,000 a day. So we went from 200,000 a day to about 57,500 per day. Okay. In a country of almost 400 million people, of over 400 million people at this point. So I'm asking questions. Okay. When we look at numbers, when we try and figure out if this is a feasible alternative, specifically, how do we as a people engage with the understanding of fear and threat versus ability to have a free and right society? Freedom will always come with risk. There is no freedom that does not carry an implied risk with it. So if you're going to state quite simply that, well, I want the freedom to do this, well, then you also have the risk of screwing that freedom up. I mean, it's there. It's going to be there. It's always going to be there. You walk down the sidewalk, okay? You can trip, you can injure yourself, you can hurt yourself. The air that you breathe might have a contaminant or a pollutant in it. There is nothing that you can qualitatively call safe in this world. We need to stop acting like we can. We need to stop acting like we have to. You cannot bubble wrap society. It doesn't work that way. If you try and bubble wrap each individual or bubble wrap society in toto, you cannot. It is impossible. Because in order for people to live their lives, in order for people to have any measurable understanding of freedom, it has to come with associated risks. And we genuinely need to talk about this as a people. When something like this happens, there are many people that have had fear ruin. I'm not going to call it ruin, but they've had fear run their lives. Now, there are some people that are complete naysayers and deniers and are way over on the other side too. And believe me, they're just as bad, if not worse. But I have seen businesses and livelihoods and people be absolutely obliterated by the mandates put in place. I have seen people that have desperately needed counseling that are staring at a webcam, that there is no human interaction. And when there is no human interaction, it is a hard trip on the struggle bus for them. It really is. And the answers that are given by our lead scientists and our politicians, they claim they go by the numbers, and yet what numbers? Is one too many? Is 100 too many? The goalposts keep moving. There are no quantifiable numbers where they say, okay, if we hit this point, this is where we're good. If we hit this point, this is where we're good. And individual estates have had to try and set some sort of mandate, but even then, those numbers keep shifting and those numbers keep moving because, well, we'll talk about 25%, but 25% of what? 25% of ICU beds? 25% of hospital beds in general? 25% of what? Is it 25% of COVID beds? Because those numbers shift. So how are we dealing with this as a society? I want to hear from you guys. How are you dealing with this? Where do you believe we should go? Because remember, we're all in this together. We are straight up in this together. So where should we go next? Should we just open everything up and everybody takes individual responsibility for this? Should localities be able to set mask mandates and stuff like that? Should it be counties? Should it be states? Please, by all means, comment. Let me know. One more thing about the virus. We're going to talk about the vaccine, and the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is pushing back against the latest one that was released, the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, and thought this was kind of interesting. In a press release yesterday, Bishop Kevin C. Rhodes said that people should instead take Pfizer's or Moderna's vaccine if possible, because it raises additional moral concerns through its connection to aborted fetal cells. Here's the actual quote. If one can choose among equally safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines, the vaccine with the least connection to abortion-derived cell lines should be chosen. Therefore, if one has the ability to choose a vaccine, Pfizer or Moderna's vaccines should be chosen over Johnson & Johnson's. On Friday, the Archdiocese of New Orleans released a similar statement warning that the latest vaccine from Janssen or Johnson & Johnson is morally compromised. Now, the USCCB previously said that Catholics could receive Moderna's or Pfizer's vaccines, noting that the use of products was very remote from the initial evil of the abortion. The debate centers around the cell line HEK293, which was cloned from a fetus aborted in the early 1970s. The cell line itself is not composed of original fetal tissue, and neither Moderna's, Pfizer's, nor Johnson & Johnson's vaccine contain fetal tissue. But the FDA issued an emergency use authorization for Johnson & Johnson's vaccine on Saturday. And again, the US CCB urged Catholics to refrain from utilizing the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines if, quote, comparable alternatives with no connection to abortion are available. This is a very important topic for many people, actually including myself, the issue of abortion and how it has affected society and how it has affected people, and how we treat it in life. And to be honest, are they going a little out of whack with this thing? Maybe, but they're attempting to be consistent as well. They see the US CCB sees abortion as a scourge, a plague, an evil, a sin, and because of that, they have tried to maintain consistency, saying we don't agree with using anything that is from aborted fetal tissue. We don't agree that abortion should be utilized for the betterment of anything because it's still the loss of a human life. That's where they're coming down on the issue. Now, Johnson & Johnson defended its research, saying that there is no fetal tissue in the COVID-19 vaccine. It's an inactivated or non-infective adenovirus vector, similar to a cold virus, which codes for the coronavirus spike S protein. We are able to manufacture hundreds of millions of doses using our engineered cell line system that enables the rapid production of new viral vaccines to combat many of the most dangerous infectious diseases. Now, the Archdiocese did, to their credit, emphasize the role of a medical provider and an individual's conscience. So they're doing this as form of conscience. So if you are okay with this, then they say, okay, it's fine. You have no issue of conscience. Go right ahead. But if there is a hang up, if there is a problem, if there is something where you're unsure about it, then that's where, okay, we're, back off. Here's a reason, just state the reason and go with it. Now, this is there are a couple of other issues here, but Here's what the statement from the Archdiocese reads. We maintain that the decision to receive the COVID-19 vaccine remains one of individual conscience in consultation with one's healthcare provider. We also maintain that in no way does the Church's position diminish the wrongdoing of those who decided to use cell lines from abortions to make vaccines. In doing so, we advise that if the Moderna or Pfizer vaccine is available, Catholics should choose to receive either of those vaccines rather than to receive the new Johnson & Johnson vaccine because of its extensive use of abortion-derived cell lines. So, yeah. Again, they're trying to maintain consistency, whether you agree with them or not. And I applaud them for at least attempting to be consistent. Now, let's move off this. Let's go to taxes, and then we're going to talk about tech after this. So, taxes. Warren Buffett, a very, very rich person, and I just, oh man, boy, here we go. Okay, we're going to get into this. So, Warren Buffett proposed a ultra-millionaire tax act, which has actually been proposed by a group of Senate and House Democrats and independent Senator Bernie Sanders on Monday. Warren Buffett said, yes, this is something we should do. The Democrats stepped up and said, yeah, let's try this. Let's see if this works. The tax would be a 2% annual levy on the wealth over $50 million and 3% on wealth over $1 billion. So that means that Elon Musk would owe $4.6 billion in 2020 and would still have a fortune of over $148 billion at the end of the year, but would owe even more the next year. Because remember, it's annual. So we're talking about $4.6 billion and then another $4.6 billion and then another $4.6 billion. Bill Gates would have to pay $3.6 in 2020. Mark Zuckerberg would have to pay $3 billion in 2020. Jeff Bezos, however, would come out the worst. Again, considered one of the world's richest men. Jeff Bezos would owe $5.7 billion. That's billion with a B. Dollars in taxes for 2020 under this tax act. Again, Elizabeth Warren, Sanders, and others proposed a wealth tax, essentially, saying it would raise, quote, trillions in much-needed revenue and help reduce a wealth divide that has only grown wider during the pandemic. The tax would be 2% annual levy on wealth over 50 million, 3% over 1 billion. Warren said the tax would only affect the wealthiest 100,000 American families, or the top 0.05%, and would raise about $3 trillion over 10 years. How much of that money is going to be overseas? If you've got the money, why stay in the States then? If you're going to do this, this is ridiculous. Now, apparently the COVID crisis has accelerated America's wealth gap. You notice how they keep talking about the gap? To quote Margaret Thatcher, it is a socialist policy, a socialist policy. They would rather have the gap be here rather than here rather than here. When they start talking about the gap, they're not talking about necessarily this happening. They're talking about this. This is what they want. They don't want the bottom to go up. They want the top to come down. Because they want people to live in a smaller wealth distribution. But they never talk about the bottom coming up, building wealth, having property, having a property-owning democracy, and a rights-based democracy that way. What they are talking about is taking that top, slamming it down on top of the bottom. We're talking about radical wealth redistribution at this point. This is socialism 101. Okay. If you want to look up, by the way, it's an excellent speech. It's only about 2 minutes long. Go look up on YouTube Margaret Thatcher's socialism. If you do that, you should be able to find it. It's about a 3 or 4 minute video. Absolutely great. It's her last prime minister's questions, which were just phenomenal. So funny. So great. But yeah, take a look at billionaire tax bills here. So here's what it says. So according to the calculations from the Institute for Policy Studies and Americans for Tax Fairness, Jeff Bezos, the world's richest person, would owe $5.7 billion in 2020 under the ultra millionaire tax. He would still have been left with a net worth of more than $185 billion. Elon Musk would owe $4.6 billion. Bill Gates would have to pay $3.6 billion. Mark Zuckerberg would have to pay $3 billion. The wealth tax on billionaires, this is a quote from the director of the Program on Inequality of the Institute for Policy Studies. The wealth tax on billionaires alone would fund almost 3/4 of President Biden's entire $1.9 trillion pandemic rescue package currently pending before the Senate. Yeah, which, by the way, that's a nightmare, too. Go look up that bill. Less than a third of it is actually going to Americans. Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, that's all we're going to talk about for taxes because we're running out of time and I really just don't care at this point because it's going to die. It has to die. That is a terrible idea. Now, here's where we're going to talk about tech. This is pretty cool. There's a 300-year-old letter in Europe. It's been sealed. It's never been opened. The letter is dated July 31st, 1693. Jacques Sénécal asked his cousin Pierre Lepere, a French merchant in The Hague, for a certified copy of a death notice for Daniel Lepere. Now, it's no history-making revelation, but the technique used to actually read the letter is very interesting. Scientists are using technology to read the century-old letter without opening it. That's right, it's still sealed. It's 300 years old and it's still sealed. But they've scanned the letter and they are able to unlock and unfold the letter from using this technology. Now, all those years ago, Sénécal's letter was closed using a process called letter locking, a complex folding technique that used globally to secure post before the invention of envelopes. Think of it like ancient encryption. Letters sealed this way couldn't be opened without getting torn, and rips indicated a note had been tampered with before reaching the intended recipient. Letter locking was an everyday activity for centuries across cultures, borders, and social classes. It's actually pretty cool. The Thomas F. Peterson Conservator at MIT Libraries, Jenna Dombrijo, and was the author of the paper published on Tuesday in the journal Nature Communications that details the virtual unlocking technique. Now, letter locking is very interesting here. It is a pretty complex thing that allows people to have this security before envelopes were a thing, and actually, if they didn't have money for the wax seals like we see on many parcels of the time, this protected the mail, which is pretty cool. It's an interesting idea. But yeah, look up if you want more information on this one, as I'm running out of time. This one's actually on CNET if you want to look at the article in full and show how they actually do this. Scientists read a 300-year-old sealed letter without opening it. So look up that in Google. You'll be able to see it. It's actually pretty stinking cool. That being said, I want to thank you guys for being here. Thank you for tuning in and not tuning out because I bumped my microphone. Sorry about that. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate every one of you, your likes, and your, follow us. Make sure that you're getting your daily Black Sheep Bravo content. I'll see you guys on Friday morning. That's right, Friday morning. And let's have some fun. Preacher out. Adios, everybody.